This is Goals with Soul, the podcast for visionary coaches and entrepreneurs, building your business with inspired action. In alignment with your mission and authentic message, so you can create impact for your soul clients and feel lit up every day. I'm your host, Jo Ingram, married mum of 3 daughters from London and a former ad agency director turned business coach and strategist. In Goals with Soul, we blend revenue generation with energetics, marketing strategies with pranic healing, and ambitious business goals with our soul's desires. If you're looking to build your business with less efforting and more ease, this is the podcast for you.
Now, I know how it feels to be misaligned with your messaging and not feel that you're doing yourself justice when it comes to showing up on your website, in social media, content, in the way that you express what it is that you really do. Because the work that we do is so from the heart. It's so personal, and sometimes articulation and expression of that is something that doesn't come as naturally. And the problem is that when we show up in public, in online spaces, and we're not expressing ourselves in that full, authentic, aligned way, is that two problems can exist when it comes to clients. First is that it may be that your clients aren't moving towards you, that they're not resonating. But secondly, it could be that you're attracting the wrong kind of clients. Now, whether a client is wrong or not is a very personal opinion. But for me and many of my clients, we recognize that when you feel de-energized at the end of a coaching call, there is a misalignment with who you're calling in. And it always starts with the messaging you're putting out. And for that reason, I am opening up some time in my calendar over the next week to gift my listeners a free magnetic messaging assessment. You simply answer some questions on a form, won't take you more than 5-7 minutes tops. And I will personally take a peek at the places that you share online and give you personalized feedback on what you can do to improve your messaging. If that's exciting to you and resonates with the truth that you need to improve your messaging, go on into the show notes and you'll find a link there which will take you to the free magnetic messaging assessment form. Fill in your details and watch for me jumping into your inbox soon. And now on with the show. Welcome to Goals with Soul. I'm Joanna Ingram, and today we're looking at a very practical side of building a business, which is the email list. Now, I remember when I very first started, I was somewhat seduced by Amy Porterfield's wonderful work on list building. And I knew really from my heart that building an email list was going to be very important to my business. But like most, I didn't know where to start and I didn't know what best practice was or where to go from that point. And although I have built my email list intuitively and enjoy doing so, I always lean in to gathering expertise on this subject. Because bottom line, and I really want you to hear this for the truth that it is, resonating with our soul clients is the most important thing we can do for our business. And as a messaging expert, I believe that speaking our messaging from the heart and truly attracting those clients we're meant to work with because of who we are is the number one thing you can do to create sustainability and joy in your business. And using an email list to do that is fundamental. It's that beautiful blend between the energetics of the being you in the online space and the practicality of actually getting it done so people get to hear from you and you can reach people with your message. So for that reason, I'm very excited to welcome Meera onto the show today. She is an email marketing strategist and 3 times Amazon best-selling author of the books The 1 Hour Content Plan, The Blog Startup, and But I'm Not an Expert. Meera shares her unique profitable email system and addicted business framework to help make powerful marketing strategies simple and relatable so small business owners can build a tribe that's addicted to their zone of genius. Meera is truly an inspiration in this space, and I cannot wait to share our conversation with you. Let's dive in. Hey, Meera, welcome to Goals with Soul.
Hi, Jo. Thank you so much for having me.
Fantastic. Before we dive into all this email goodness, I'd love to know how you got in to actually being an expert on email marketing.
I actually got into this pretty much by accident. I was working in corporate. I was doing marketing back in my corporate job, and I took a little bit of a break, stayed home because I was on maternity leave, and I was about to go back to work when I had a bit of a health scare. So I had to stay home, go get surgery, figure myself out. And I wanted to really still be rooted to marketing because that was always my passion. And I just started a marketing blog in a sense. And one of those things that I had right from day one was an email list and kind of like a proper system in place for talking with people through email. I think it was kind of organic in a sense. I started blogging, and at the same time, people were reaching out to me. They came, read my posts, and then they signed up for my email list. They went through my sequences, and people were reaching out to me and saying, "Hey, I loved your welcome email series. I loved the emails that you're sending. How can I do the same for my business?" So that kind of prompted me to, hey, okay, maybe there's something there. And I really started digging deeper into the questions people were asking about email. And I just got very interested in email as a niche. And then I started to explore and testing things out with my own business. I went and got myself certified, and learned more about email. And started working with people one-on-one. And I think it just kind of grew from there.
Yeah, did you actually come out of a corporate job and then move into this world of coaching and online business growth?
Yes. So I was doing marketing and international relations back in corporate. So, this was like 10 years ago. So people were still very hesitant about the online space. And so I was in the government part of it. And, there was a lot of hesitancy about going online and trying social media. So what I did pretty much was content, but more of the traditional stuff like the website, the content copy for the website, and then the annual reports, those kind of things pretty much. But not really in the digital space. We were kind of dipping our toes in at that point when I had to leave my job.
Yeah, well, it seems like it was a good time to make that transition because you would have been well ahead of the curve. And there's been so much growth in email marketing and, well, all forms of online marketing. But what really fascinates me about the email piece is that we're taught as online coaches to build our list. It's absolutely fundamental. And we create lead magnets and we wire up all of the back end tech so that we can really share a little taste of our expertise and kind of encourage people to come towards us by putting them on our email list. And then I've lost count of the number of times that people I've worked with have said, now what do I do? I've got them on my email list, and now what? Like weekly newsletters, welcome sequences, all these words kind of just flow, except the emails don't. And I know that this is the area that is your absolute passion and specialty. So enlighten us, like what do you have to have in place and how can you go about it?
You're so right, because we are so focused on the start an email list, build an email list, but we don't think about the after. So, okay, what happens to that person once they get on the email list? And most people tell me, I'm just going to wait for about 1,000 people on my list before I start emailing them. And my first question is, do those people know that they are a part of 1,000? Do they think they are a part of 5,000 or 100? They don't have those numbers. I mean, they don't think along those lines. They signed up because they're interested in something that you said, and they probably resonated with whatever you talked about, on your lead magnet or a landing page or wherever they heard or saw you. And they likely have a pain point that you have mentioned about and then you're talking about. So it is absolutely crucial to start building out that touch point from the moment someone gets into your email list. And I am a huge fan of having like a welcome email series, kind of like an onboarding sequence of at least 3 to 5 emails. And this really lays out the red carpet for your new subscriber. It introduces them to your brand and your business and your perspective. And one of these really fascinating research articles that I came across on email a couple of years back, it said that people are the most engaged with your brand in the first, what was it? I think it was 36 to 48 hours after they signed up. And it makes sense, right? I mean, they read something, they saw something, and they signed up. And if you capitalize on this during this time block and you get in front of them and you get in their inbox, it really cements your name in their mind. And it really gets them to it really reinforces your brand, I would say, and your brand name. So I like to do it. And this is just me. I like to do the first 3 emails back to back. So I send a welcome email immediately, and I have the next 2 emails go out one day after the other. So when I share this with people, some of my clients are like, isn't that a little bit too much to be in their inbox? But I'm comfortable with that, because for me, the main thing is, okay, yeah, the 36 to 48 hours, people are most engaged. Let me get in the inbox during this time. And I am not pitching anything or anything of that sort. I am purely talking about the pain point that they raised their hands and signed up for. So the key thing here is make sure it's very aligned. Whatever they signed up for, the lead magnet that you're giving, make sure that the follow-up emails after that are also going to be about that. And if you do that, you're completely safe. People are going to be happy to hear from you. So I would say that is like the bare minimum. And if you're not comfortable with doing the first 3 emails back to back, then by all means, spread it out. Have a welcome email, send another email a couple of days later. But, don't just show up when you have an offer to sell. There are a couple of people, they will find me and they were like, I have something for launch in two weeks, Meera. So what can I do? I'm like, okay, have you been talking about it to your list? And they're like, no, I haven't emailed them in like 3 weeks, or 3 months, because I've been so busy putting this offer together. And you don't want to be in that situation.
I completely get that, but it's like, what does one do? Now, I love email, and I think over the last couple of years that I've been building my business, I've got more and more and more comfortable at it. Now, sometimes I follow particular strategies, other times I just feel aligned and I go with the flow. But the most important thing is that I actually enjoyed doing it. But I remember a time before where I didn't enjoy doing it, and I didn't really get it. And I sort of found my way through, but it took me a longer period of time. And I know that you must have strategies that help people get there sooner, because they have confidence in actually what they're doing and how they're going about it. And I know when we did a bit of preparation before, we talked a little bit about newsletters. I remember you have really strong opinions about yuck to the newsletter, and yet so many others talk about the sanctity of the newsletter. But I also know that sometimes people use the word kind of to replace what they just mean by weekly email. Or is that a newsletter, or is that just an email? Can you just demystify all of this for us and let us know exactly what we should be doing instead?
Let's kind of just get on the same page. And for anyone listening, and so they know what we're talking about when we say newsletter. So when I refer to the newsletter, what I mean is an email that has a few different links. Typically, when businesses send a newsletter, it's kind of like a recap of, hey, this is my week, this is what has been going on. So they have like a short summary, and then they might link to a couple of content pieces that they've written. And then they might also say that, oh, okay, by the way, I also have a 20% off on this product. You can get it here, or you can see my latest post on Instagram. So it's really like in a week of my business, or this is what has been going on. That is what a newsletter is. So because of the structure of a newsletter, and there's so many multiple calls to action, lots of different links, it doesn't help very much with reinforcing your message. It doesn't help very much with recalling your perspective or your message or anything of that sort, just because there's so much noise in a newsletter. So I'm not saying that you should completely axe the newsletter, but if that's the only thing that you're sending week to week to week, I would say you should rethink your strategy. So I still have a newsletter, but the way I use it is I kind of use it as a buffer in between my campaigns. So let's say I'm launching something, or let's say I am I'm trying to get my audience to think about another topic or a theme. And in between these two kind of like campaigns or events, I have a tiny buffer of time where I just want to keep it light, maybe 1 or 2 weeks. And I don't want to have like back-to-back promotions or back-to-back events. This is when I would maybe send a newsletter just to keep it casual. So instead of a newsletter, what I would suggest you do to anyone listening who's kind of like struggling with, okay, what do I send in a sense, is to really link email back to your broader business and marketing goals. Like, what do you have planned for the next 3 to 6 months? And people would say, okay, yeah, I'm going to launch this, or I have this coaching program that I'm going to launch, or I'm going to relaunch it, or, I have anniversary, like a birthday sale. So, okay, these are all events. And let's say you're doing one a month, then this is a way for you to kind of structure your emails around that event. So you know that, all right, I want people to take this action. So let's say it's a coaching program. I want them to sign up for the discovery call. You want to work back and figure out, okay, what are the things that I need to tell this person so that they go and take action and they sign up for the discovery call? Because ultimately that's the call to action. So you work back and you figure out, okay, I definitely need to have in one email there that addresses objections. Or I definitely need to have one email in there that brings awareness, because if people don't know that they have a problem that needs to be solved, why would they want to come find you? Why would they, sign up for the discovery call in the first place? So this is a simple way to really work back on what you should be sending and cut out that blank screen syndrome in that sense. So for me, this has been a strategy that has worked tremendously well. And so I really work by themes or campaigns. And in between, if there are periods of time where I'm not launching anything, I don't really have anything, I just want to keep things light, then yes, I would do a newsletter. But I don't send a newsletter every single week. I would rather keep it based on that theme or the campaign.
Now, that makes perfect sense. And of course, having a structure and a strategy to the emails that you send out is the appropriate thing to do as a CEO of your business. And as well as being the marketing director and all of the other things, you have to have your eye on actually what your objectives are and your goals. So I'm so pleased that you've pointed that out in the context of exactly what we need to do our emails. And I know that in some of my earlier days when I was doing my launches, which I now currently don't do launching as a strategy, but if the launching is the way that you want to go, for example, you need to have a email sequence, specific emails that you will walk people through in order to get them there. And I love the way you've outlined there's objections and there's awareness and all of these pieces. Well, I was just curious as well, because a big part of how I work with clients is about unique messaging and being aligned in your articulation. And yet when it comes to email sequences, it seems completely acceptable to pull off swipe files and be like, yeah, that's fine. That worked for that other coach. I'll just totally take that email. I'll just change a few words. If they're a health coach, I'll just switch it to life coach or whatever that might be, and I'm good to go. In reality, can you ever do that? And if you can, in what circumstances, like how would you recommend that you go?
Oh gosh, the swipe file is like such a contested topic. I think that any business when they're starting out, it is useful to have a swipe file, because I think when we start our businesses, we don't really know our brand voice. We haven't really figured out how we're going to sound, what we're going to say. So using references, seeing how other people do it, it's a good starting off point, but I think you can't just rest there. You can't just feed off those templates and expect to kind of pull through. I think over time you have to be willing to experiment. So yes, use that as a starting off point, use that to kind of get inspired, maybe grab some ideas, see what you like, see what you don't like. Because I remember when I started out like 6-7 years ago, and I was really looking at how people were doing things in the space, there were some things I was immediately repelled by. I was like, no, I'm not going to do that. And some things was like, hey, I like this. I think I could kind of adopt this to my style. So really keep an eye out and be curious about what you like, what you don't like, and make it your own. So I say swipes to a certain extent, but after a point in your business, your brand voice will evolve, and be courageous enough to bring that into your emails or to any kind of content that you're putting out there.
Oh, such good advice, and actually very true of what I help coaches do as well. It's like, you've got to start somewhere. And I really respect the fact that you're like, you know what, we've got a gold standard, but a bit like what you said earlier about waiting until you've got 1,000 people on your email list. Like we just can't wait. We've got to just start where we're at. And actually we get more and more comfortable the more we do it, even if we're not at the end goal at that very first starting point. So yeah, totally on board with that. And I'm just also really thinking about when you make that start, and even whether you've got a swipe file or whether you're a bit more advanced and you're more comfortable writing your stuff, talk to us a little bit about content. I know that you talked about overcoming objections and things like that, but What is it that a typical email subscriber really wants from us now? How can we engage with them and ultimately move them through our sales process from engagement to conversion?
I don't know, maybe I have a slightly different perspective on this. When you're in the marketing space, everyone tells you that you need to be talking about pain points. If you talk about pain points, you will be seen as an ally. People will be like, oh, yes, she knows me, she understands me, and all of that. I think, yes, there is a space for you to talk about pain points and problems. But if you think about it, if you are talking about that, everyone else in your space is also talking about that, specifically if you have got overlapping audiences. So what is going to make your content stand out? For me, this is where I feel that the email subscriber, they might think that they want tips and hacks or how-tos, but what they really cherish and what they, I would say, kind of respect is if you are willing to push them a little bit and challenge the perspectives that they have, or challenge the false beliefs that they have, or the myths that they may be believing, or the mistakes that they're holding on to. I think if you go out there and you are willing to kind of challenge them with all of these, I think that is something that when I share emails on all of these specifically, that's when I've received the most engagement, and people are like, thank you for sharing this, because I've never heard of this before, or I've always thought about it this way, but I never thought about it that way. So I feel people actually deep down, they long for this, but on the outside, they may be, I wish I could get some tips, or send me some tips on this. But yeah, so I kind of go against the grain in a sense. So yes, you can send tips and how to content, but the ones that really make an impact are when you challenge your audience, I would say, just to get them to think a little bit out of the box.
Oh, yeah, because of course, if you can get them to understand that and shift their belief, then you're going to move them in the direction of understanding how you can help so much more. I'd love it. Could you give us a live example, Meera, of a typical belief that you shift in perception when you're using your email sort of as a tool for that?
Sure. Maybe let's just take email marketing as an example. So I have multiple content pieces on email, lead magnets on email. So the moment someone signs up for that, they come into a sequence where I'm kind of walking them through email, and so some of the things that I mentioned are like one of those things that you brought up, waiting for a perfect number of subscribers to email. Another thing that I talk about, which always gets engagement, is the right type of lead magnet. And I talk about, you can have a lead magnet that brings in a lot of people, but it doesn't do anything for your business. So a lot of people think that, oh, I have this lead magnet, it's bringing in a lot of people, but no one is buying. And for me, that's an immediate red flag. And the first question I ask is this lead magnet tied to your business? Is it tied to the offer that you're leading them to? And most of them are like, well, not quite. It's not a direct kind of fit. And that's a huge red flag, because there's a reason that you're getting a lot of people on your list and they're not buying, is because those people are not really interested in what you have to sell down the road. So these are things that I bring up where people are thinking one thing and you're kind of shifting their perspective and getting them to think about something else. So you can do this right across any niche that you have, because there are false beliefs that your audience are holding on to, whether that's the health niche or the fitness niche or anything for that matter. And it really requires you to have the curiosity to go in and dig deeper. And it does require an understanding of your audience. So and this is where people will be like, but I'm just starting out, I don't have an audience, how do I know? And I always tell them there is a wealth of information out there. Like, I'm a huge lurker in Facebook groups. So just go and stalk conversations, just look around, look at what questions people are asking. And all of this has always gone and become fodder for my emails. So I would say, just don't be scared. I still remember in the early days when I would write these emails and I would be so terrified just to hit send when I had I think less than 100 people on my list, and the fear, naturally goes away over some time, but you need to kind of keep pushing yourself to do it.
as inspired as people are by this, and I know because I'm buzzing from it, I'm like, yes, 100%. There's going to be an element of people thinking, that sounds awesome, but I've got so much on my plate already. I'm supposed to be posting in social media every single day, and I'm supposed to be doing all the other things. And now I have to make sure that I've done my offer before my lead magnet, and now I need to redo my lead magnet, or whatever it might be that's coming up for them. And writing all those emails can often feel like a really big deal. And when people, and I can talk to this from firsthand experience, get into this burnout cycle of just doing all the things and becoming overwhelmed with the workload. And, you know, like when I was 6 months into my business, I pretty much stopped everything because it was just like reliving my corporate days on the steroids. It was like, yeah, this isn't what my dream was at all. So I had to take a big step back. And I know so many people are building their businesses now with ease and in alignment. So this is something that's incredibly important to me. And I would love to understand how you can start to engage with your audiences through email, but without the burnout.
I think it really boils down to understanding what your priorities are and what things that you're doing in your business and how they are adding value back. So when people would ask me, should I stop posting on social media or should I start a Facebook group? The thing is, okay, what is your intention and what is the value that it's adding back to your business? So if it's not adding value back, then that's a kind of question that you need to think about. Do you still want to hang on to it, or are there other things that you should rather be doing? So for me, one of those things I always tell about email is that going by stats, it is the most profitable marketing channel out there. So you can send a message to your email list versus post it on social media, and you would get way more sales on, you know, with your email list. So that being said, there are certain things you can do to make it easier so that you don't kind of get burned out with email. For me, I'm a huge believer and I'm a huge fan of batching my email. So I never sit down and write one email at a time. And I always work, like I said, themes and campaigns. So I make sure once I know the theme, or once I know the campaign, let's say for May or for June, I know what exactly I want my call to action to be. What is the action I want my audience to take? I would say, okay, these are the 4 emails I want to write. And I know how one email nicely leads into the other. And I would sit down. Typically, it takes me about maybe a couple hours. And I would write, you know, each email is maybe 300 to 500 words. And I would just batch write it all at once. So the first day probably is just an outline. And then the next time I work on it, I flesh it out a little bit more. And then the third day, I get it up. So working in this way for me has really helped. So I think one of those things that leads people to get very worked up about email is not having a proper plan in place. When you sit down and you're stressed because you know an email needs to go out, that's the worst feeling ever. So when I am in that spot sometimes and I'm like, okay, I don't know what to send, it's always because I don't know what I want them to do, or I don't know what I want them to get out of it. So once you're clear on that, it gets easier to create any content in general. It's about priorities. Like I can go and not post on social media for 2 to 3 weeks, but you will definitely get an email from me every week. So that is the priority that I give to email. It's really making space for email, I would say.
Yeah, I get that because email, the conversion rates and click-through rates, in comparison with a lot of what's going on social media, that really the gold is in the email list, particularly if you want to make conversions and sales. And I was thinking, you know, there's so much confusion around what success metrics really look like for email. So clearly, having you here as an expert, give us a rundown. What metrics should we be prioritizing, and what are those sort of values that mean that we're doing good, right?
I think for me, long term, it always boils down to sales, because you know we see conversion, but behind that conversion, there's trust. It means that people trust you. You've taken time to actually build up that trust. It might not be like, you know, today you're going to get conversions immediately, but the moment you kind of take that time, you set up a welcome email series, you work on sending regular emails, you're going to build trust. I like to use this term called content expert association, where people start to associate you with their topic. They start to see you as someone they can trust with the topic. They see you as someone with authority in the topic. Naturally, when you come out with an offer where you are an offer on that topic, you will get sales and you will get conversions. So it's really a matter of what you've been sharing with your list and whether you've been consistent. So if you've been beyond that how to and beyond the tips and the hacks, if you've been doing the work to, like we spoke about, shift beliefs and all of those stuff, then you will get sales. So for me, ultimately, sales is, and people think that it's like why is everything about sales? Why is everything about numbers? Yes, it is about numbers, but beyond that, it shows a lot about whether you've been consistent. It shows a lot about whether you've done the work. So, opens and clicks, yeah, to a certain extent, but our opens can be a little bit of a vanity metric in a sense. Okay, it has some basis in that, because when people are clicking, it shows that they're interested. But ultimately, you are in business, so you want them to take that action. And how effective is your email in getting them to take that action? That is what you want to aim for. So for me, it's always at the end of the day, in the long term, are you able to get sales?
Absolutely. I mean, no one can argue with the truth in that. But, sometimes along the way, particularly when people start out, that's not a metric that they're able to use helpfully to ascertain whether they're doing the right thing with their email list. And I've been told all kinds of different messages from share something like a book you've read recently or a podcast you've liked with a link to start getting people familiar with clicking through, or always have a call to action, even if it's just hit reply and tell me what you did this Sunday or whatever it might be. What do you think about this kind of friendly, just getting people to, enjoy your emails and start engaging with you?
Yeah, that I completely agree with. For me, in every email, even if there's not a link, I would have something like in a postscript, I would say, hit reply, tell me your thoughts, or do you agree, do you disagree? I would have something in there where I would ask a question and I would encourage a reply. And yes, this does encourage them to hit reply. This gets them used to that two-way communication, so the first transaction does not always have to be a sale. The first transaction can be just that two-way communication. It could be click a link, or it could be hit reply, it could be give me a testimonial. And I remember one of my first so-called call to actions was, if you've been enjoying this welcome email series, would you please give me share with me a couple of words so that I can have that as a testimonial on my website. And I remember I was brand new to business, and a lot of my initial testimonials were from my earliest email subscribers. So it does not have to be a sale. It could even just be an ask. So get used to asking so that they get used to kind of giving back in a sense. So yeah, I love what you just said. And there are so many different ways you can do this. It could be a hit reply. It could be it could be like a mini survey within an email. It could be a go read my post. So there are so many other things that you can do beyond a go buy my thing. So when you don't have an offer, experiment with all of this. You can even get people to sign up for a wait list. Let's say you are testing or the validity of an offer is not really sure if it's going to work. Get them to sign up for a wait list. And if they don't, that it doesn't work. But if they do, that there's something there. So many different things to try.
Oh, I love that. Using the email list as a barometer for the offers that we could create. That's something that I've done in the past with quite a lot of success, actually. And I was amazed that it worked. Like thinking, I was thinking, I'll just ask, is it something interested in? Do you want to join my mailing list? My waiting list specifically. And people responded. And I was like, well, clearly this is something that I should now go on to actually develop. And conversely, the opposite has happened too. I've said, I've got this great idea, tell me if you like it. And no, it's been crickets. But the great news is that then saved me an awful lot of time starting to develop an idea that probably wouldn't have been very popular had I gone all the way to the end game of it. So I love the idea that your mailing list can be of use in so many different ways. And of course you own it, right? I want to get this in because I think it's really important that so many of us spend a lot of time in Instagram building our following, or on Facebook or any of the other social media channels, but we're always at the mercy of their algorithms, their changes. And as we experienced, a few months back, they went down for like 24 hours or something crazy. And some people were in the middle of a launch or in the middle of doing something for their business, and that was it. The rug was completely pulled out from under them. And I remember seeing an email from somebody who's, I'm on their mailing list and always read their emails. And within minutes, there was an email saying, Facebook's gone down, but don't worry, I'm still here doing this, this, this. And actually they were an email specialist who said, by the way, copy my email and send it to your email list straight away. It was so fast. But I think it really showed the power of owning your own data and having your own email list. Is that one of the things that excited you most about it? What made you, out of all the things that you could have chosen to do within the marketing side for online businesses, go so specifically with email?
It's just the personal nature of email. You're in people's inbox. And I remember reading something where it said that it's the thing that people check the first thing in the morning when they're still under their covers and in their bed. And it's just how personal it is. And for me, I'm one of those people who love getting emails from my friends and whoever not, so to be able to be that person for your readers, I think I just felt that it was very special. And I felt that it gave me the freedom to experiment that I felt I didn't have with social media, because, you can experiment, but there's no guarantee that the algorithms are going to show your post to those people. Like you said, I've heard horror stories of people having their Facebook groups shut down, and groups that they've spent years building and nurturing, 20,000, 30,000 people shut down overnight, no reason. People who had their Instagram accounts shut down overnight, no reason. So it's really, you're creating content on rented land. So by all means, sure, go and do that, but don't neglect the email list, because you own that. And email is kind of like that completely not sexy opposite thing of social media. And I think that's the reason why people are like, isn't it dying? Isn't it like dead? And I always tell them, I've been doing this for 6-7 years, and every year people tell me it's going to die, but it's still very much alive. So yeah, just don't kind of neglect it.
And you said just now, Meera, about how much you love getting emails from friends and that it's such a personal medium. And this is something that's interesting because we get the opportunity to have quite glamorous looking emails. And at this point, I'm with Flowdesk, and Flowdesk has all these stunning, templates that you can use. But I tend not to use them. And I always just go with what looks like a regular email with a few emojis, because that's what you get from your friends. Do you notice that there's a difference in how people engage with emails if you show up looking hyper glossy? And is there a time that you should be doing that? Or is the kind of very plain email template where it just looks like text the way most of us should be going?
Actually, kudos to you for saying that, you prefer the plain text email, because I'm a huge fan of the plain text email, where it just looks like you are sending to, like a friend or a family member or anything of that sort. And if you think about it, those glossy, really templatized, designed emails, those are the ones that you would get from big brands. And typically those are the ones where you would like, oh, here's like a 10% coupon code or something like that. And I always associate those kind of templatized, designed emails with brands that, every now and then pop into my inbox with a coupon code. But it's not something, those brands have a space in your life, obviously, but it's not where you are kind of developing kind of a trusting relationship, where you're showing up maybe a couple of steps ahead of them, where you're trying to build authority, or you're trying to show up as someone who they can reach out to for help, or, to be coached, to be taught, or anything of that sort. So I think, I've always been only using the plain text email. At most, for some people who are like really resistant, I would say at most just add a header with your picture and maybe, your brand name or your tagline, and then everything else, keep it really simple. So I think that's the way to go, specifically for the type of businesses that we are building. It's really based on thought. It's really based on relationship. So for coaches or digital product creators, I think that's the best kind.
How great to get advice that actually says, keep it simple. The advice that says, no, you don't have to do anything except type something. So that's probably one of the easiest things that we could take on board. So, if there's resistance to getting your emails out because it feels like you have to become some graphic designer or something, you absolutely don't. I love that. And I feel vindicated for just keeping it simple for so long as well. So thank you for that. And I also want to think a bit about not making mistakes, the email boo-boos. And I always think, right, if I'm going to send this out, Is it going to end up in the junk folder? Or am I going to bother people and they're going to unsubscribe? And I personally, after seeing some unsubscribes, a fair chunk of them at one point, I decided to never check my unsubscribes again. I was like, it's completely irrelevant. I'm not bothered by it. Although I think if I looked at the number, I might find myself going, but why? What did I do wrong? Like, what's happening here? So what's your thoughts on the whole junk folder, unsubscribed sort of trauma of the whole email piece?
Subscribes are a part and parcel of every email list. It's just a natural part of it. You should be worried if you're not getting unsubscribes, because if you're not getting unsubscribes, it means people are either dropping you in spam or they are likely just not opening your emails or not taking any action at all. So I would rather them unsubscribe than keep my email in there and put me in spam, because it's a little bit technical. But what I've read about on this is that when people engage with your emails, it sends kind of like a signal to the email delivery services like your Yahoo and your Gmail. It sends them as kind of a signal that, okay, this is a trustworthy sender in a sense. Email sender, it's credible, it's trustworthy. People are opening, people are clicking, people are engaging. But if they start to get an increase in the number of people who are not opening your emails, just kind of dropping it in spam or the junk folder, then it sends them a signal that, okay, maybe this person is not a credible email sender. And what they're going to do is flag the future emails that you're sending. And it's going to end up more and more in either the junk or even in the promotional folder, because that's the kind of sign that they're getting. So I would rather have them unsubscribe, which is why I'm also a huge fan of doing regular list cleans. So every 3 months to 4 months, I would go in and have a look at, okay, who has not opened, who has not, engaged, pick out all of these cold subscribers, and I would send them an email, very simple, 1 or 2 emails, like kind of like a re-engagement campaign. I would say, hey, I noticed you haven't been clicking, or haven't been opening or engaging in my emails. I don't want to take up space in your inbox. So if this is not a fit for you right now, it's not what you need, by all means, unsubscribe. Or if you still want to stay, then click a link. And anyone who doesn't click, I would go ahead and then unsubscribe them or remove them from my email list after sending out those emails. So this keeps your email list healthy. It keeps your stats, gives you a clearer picture of your stats. So okay, people are not just not opening your emails. You get a proper sign of the number of clicks and the opens and all of that stuff. So I'm a huge fan of doing regular list cleans, because you don't want to unnecessarily be paying for people who don't want to be on your list.
So this is people who haven't read your email in 3 months or 6 months? What's the time period you'd recommend?
I think it depends on how often you're sending your emails. So if you're sending emails pretty often, then I would say go for like 3 months. But if you're someone who sends emails maybe twice a month or once a month, then you want to do slightly longer, maybe once every 6 months. I have one going out every week. So I like to do it pretty regularly. Every quarter, I like to do a list clean.
Oh, that's really good advice, because it's one of those vanity metrics. Once you start building a list, particularly at the early phases, you're like, I don't want to get rid of anybody, but understanding that can actually hold back your open rates and your click-through rates and ultimately your conversions should be pretty motivating to get in there once a quarter and do an email list clean. So I'm really pleased that you've shared that. And when it comes to taking some action at the end of every episode, I always love to think about what we can do as inspired action, something that we just feel really geared up to do. And I'd love it, Meera, if you could share something that, inspired by today's conversation, anyone could do in the space of a day or so.
In a day or so, I would say go back and take a look at whether you have like a welcome email series. So is there something you're sending to someone as soon as they sign up? And if you're not, I would urge you to put together just 3 very simple emails, a welcome and then 2 emails. So this is kind of like what I call like the minimum viable nurture sequence. So just go get that up there. And it doesn't have to be very long. Each email could be maybe 300 words, and you could even link to your existing pieces of content. If you have a podcast episode you love, link to it, ask them to go check it out. If you have a YouTube video, go ask them to check it out. But just make sure you're sending something. So if there's one thing that they can absolutely get done within a day, I would say this.
Oh, that's fantastic. Thank you. I think anybody could get 3 emails as a simple welcome sequence in a day or 2. So there's a really good prompt for any of us that have built our mailing list and are starting to prioritize our lead magnet, but we haven't done the back end stuff. So thank you for that, Meera. And before we just wrap up for today, I did talk about in the introduction how acclaimed you are as an author. And that isn't something that everybody can claim, really. And I would just love it if you could tell me a little bit about how you came to get such phenomenal success and how you seem to find it so easy to write books that are so inspiring and obviously get so many people to read them. And I know in the coaching space, so many of us say, I've got a book coming, it's going to happen. And yet you've made it happen multiple times over. So what's the secret for that?
I wanted to create a revenue stream that was out of my sight. I was creating digital products. This was back in 2017. And I wanted to kind of experiment and see if I could use another marketplace that would have inbuilt buyers, inbuilt customers, inbuilt traffic, and create something there that would bring me a separate revenue stream. So my first book was the 1-hour content plan. It was just really a test. And I didn't expect it to do as well as it did. And I got amazing feedback from my existing email subscribers. And they were like, you should create and you should write more books. And it just really picked up from there. And now self-publishing has just ended up being a completely different revenue stream. And I would say for me, that is like the most passive revenue stream for me out of all of it. I think for anyone who's thinking about creating a book is to be very clear about why you're doing it. Some people do it just for credibility, just to say that, hey, I have a book. Or some people do it because they need a physical book so that they can go out for networking and kind of distribute those books out. But someone like me, I did it because I wanted my books to become a revenue stream. So depending on what your goal is, the amount of time, the energy and effort that you put in would kind of vary. So yeah, be clear about your goals and then after that kind of figure out. But it is a very, very rewarding and fulfilling experience, I would say, to see a book out there and to see people reading it and really benefiting from it.
That's fabulous. I'm going to share a link in the show notes if you want to check out Meera's books. And where else could we find you online, Meera?
Yeah, since we've been talking about email, I have a free email course that people can go through, is what I've been sharing with you guys about. It is at meera.email/course. That's the short link. I also have an Amazon book on email. It's called 300 Email Marketing Tips. That's another place that they can find me.
Thank you so much for joining me today, Meera. And my thanks to Meera for sharing so many insights with us today. And if you haven't yet jumped into the show notes to apply for your free magnetic messaging assessment with me, go ahead and click the link and simply answer the questions, and I will personally offer you feedback to help unlock your unique messaging to magnetize and attract your most soul-aligned clients. And so have an inspired action week. Take care. Bye now.